Welcome back. Today we are talking with Robert Hall, the author of Building Resilient Futures. Robert, great first and second segments there. Lots of really interesting perspectives and ideas. For our last segment here, let's talk about agility and adaptability. How does being agile and adaptable help us? And by us, it can be individuals, communities, or organizations.
Yeah, well, in my book, that generally, agility and adaptability are key elements of resilience. You can't be resilient if you aren't agile, in my estimation. And why do I say that? Well, when you think of resilience being a response to a situation, a crisis, an emergency, which may be unexpected or may not be, you need to have a flexibility of mind, a fleet of foot, to be able to respond to something that perhaps you hadn't experienced before, and take advantage of any opportunities that may arise by that situation. So it isn't all bad. It's what can you get out of this that may help you. And it centers on really having a mixture that allows rapid decision making with that swift relocation of resources against new priorities. That's what it's all about. If you can do that well, then you will be resilient and overcome. And in order to deliver these attributes, I think good leadership and empowerment are again key elements. And I would focus my comments around this on what is commonly called the North Star, having a North Star, or in other contexts, a mission process, a mission command process that allows you to identify what is important in the crisis. And this obviously comes down to good leadership. If you all, in whatever organization or community or country, know what you're trying to achieve, then whatever crisis, emergency, and disaster surrounds you, then you know that you have to try and achieve that with what resources you have. And hopefully you are also empowered to have the freedom to muster those resources, achieve that central focus. I mean, go back to my military days, and the military have certainly adopted this mission focus concept. As long as everybody knows what they are aiming towards, then you can let your subordinates, your soldiers, take their initiative, be empowered, deliver what you want, because you know they know what to do and what you're trying to get. So that's the first point about being responsive, agile, and adaptable. In the case of adaptive, I think it's of accepting the change and using your imagination to be flexible and not be constrained by silos that you may have traditionally grown up in organizations, because they can be barriers if you focus too much on them. And what we need is really to work between boundaries, to allow those boundaries to be flexible and allow a process of osmosis to occur across them, so that you are again all working together rather than in narrow boxes, but collectively working towards a goal, a common goal. And this is again where agility, technology, infrastructure can all help lead to what can amount to a transformation in process. And I would highlight in all that I said, the Ukrainians at the moment as being a nation that have shown both resilience, resistance, but above all agility and adaptability in the way they have responded to that Russian aggression, and not worked in boxes themselves, particularly the military, Ukrainian military, to the Russian challenge, and have been, largely successful so far in what they've done. So it does work. It works individually and it works on a nation. Those are my immediate comments to the, you know.
Interesting that adaptability and agility, we talk about that a lot, but what happens when organizations and people, they freeze, right? It's the fight, flight, or freeze.
Yeah.
So how can you still be agile and adaptable, or how do you instill that in people when many people just want to run or they want to ignore that something has happened? But
it's a natural response, isn't it?
Yeah.
To flee. I think the only way you can do that is by training and educating. There's a difference between those two. So that people have some experience. You don't put them all through a disaster, but they begin to realize that they can influence the situation without fleeing. And that can come through a slow process of educating and training that gives them some awareness of what they are capable of doing. And many people don't realize how capable they can be when the situation requires it, a Shackleton group. So you're never going to dispel it completely. And there will always be that element of panic. But if you can instill in enough people, and this goes again back to my mobilizing a nation, if you can instill in enough people that, panic is not the solution and they can help others by coming together, working together, and calming people down, but showing them what they can do, then I think the mass panic can be avoided. But it doesn't come naturally. And it does need that education and training. And it begins at schools, and it needs to go through business, right the way through organizations on a regular basis.
We only have a few minutes left. There was a story you wanted to share with us before we ended the show today. Would you like to share?
Thank you, Alex. It's a story which I think is worth concluding this conversation on, because we've been talking throughout about resilience, but ultimately resilience does come back to people. I put it at the very start of this. But we need to be clever and we need to be understanding of circumstances in order to make the most of resilience. So this little story, which I will recount, I think just summarizes it quite well. It's featured in, as I say, in the epilogue of my book. And I don't claim originality, because it was told by a sound gentleman called Elie Wiesman in 1999 in the White House when he recounted it in front of the president. And it says this: it's about an emperor who had heard that there was a wise man with special powers. And the man knew when the wind was blowing what messages it would carry. And he was able to read the clouds and realize that he knew what the clouds would bring. And he heard that the birds, he heard birds and he understood the chirping of the birds carrying messages. So the emperor heard about this man, and he also knew how to read other people's minds. And so he said, I want to see this guy. And, I'd love to talk to him. So he got his people to bring the guide to him. And he asked him a series of questions. And is it true that you know how to read the clouds? Asked him. Yes, Majesty, it's true. And is it true you know the language of birds? Oh, yes, Majesty, I know about birds too. Okay, said the emperor. I have in my hands behind my back a bird. Tell me, is it alive or not? And the wise man was so afraid that whatever he said would be a tragedy, and was very cautious of replying. If he said the bird was alive, the emperor, in spite, would kill it or could. So he looked at the emperor for a long time and smiled and said, Majesty, the answer is in your hands. Resilience is in your hands, and speaking to power is part of that. I think that was a story that's worth reflecting on. Thanks, Alex.
That's a great way to end. Resilience is in our own hands. I think that's perfect.
Good.
Robert, it's great chatting with you again, and congratulations on the book once again.
Thank you.
Building Resilient Futures. A lot of different perspectives here, and I think that's what we need, especially with your story at the end here. You know, we need to look at ourselves and different places where we can start. So I really enjoyed our time together. Thank you so much.
Good. Pleasure.
And everybody watching and listening, stay prepared, everybody. If you liked that video, thumbs up. If you didn't like that video, thumbs down. But leave me a message and let me know your thoughts. Of course, don't forget to subscribe. And in the meantime, stay prepared, everybody.